Greetings viewers, if you clicked on the video link, you're here to learn how to disassemble your Gen 3 Glock, whether it's for cleaning or for any further maintenance. I'm going to do this in stages so you can check the timeline down below if there's a specific part on this process that you are looking for. So the first thing we're going to do before we disassemble a Glock pistol, because it does require us to pull the trigger to do so, we are going to safety check this thing. There is absolutely no ammo, no magazines anywhere in the room that I am in while doing this, so there is no possibility of an accident occurring. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to visually and physically ensure that there is no magazine in this weapon. It has absolutely no way to feed any ammunition in addition to what may be in the chamber into it. So that is clear. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the slide of the pistol to the rear, and I am going to visually and physically ensure that there is not a round that has somehow managed to remain in the chamber. I'm going to check all the way through. I see my white t-shirt looking all the way down, so I know that my pistol is clear. So I'm going to go ahead and let the slide go forward, pointing the pistol in a safe direction so that if by some chance when you pull the trigger on this thing, if a round does discharge, nobody is going to be hurt and there will be minimal property damage at worst. We are then going to pull the trigger on our pistol. I am pointing it straight down into the table. My legs are not underneath it. My dogs are not down there. There is nothing that's going to get hurt except the wood from the table and maybe some tile if this did discharge. So the trigger has been pulled, nothing went bang. So we're winning at this point. Now the easiest way that I have found to do this, what I will do is, if you were to imagine holding this thing in a shooting grip, all I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate my hand up so that my index finger wraps around the top. I can use my thumb and I'm going to use my index finger to pull the slide back. You can see it's moving ever so slightly. At the front of the pistol on either side there is a little lever here. You need to pull this down on both sides evenly. I'll take my opposite index finger and thumb and I will grab both sides of that. While I pull this slide back slightly, I'm going to pull down on that lever till it's down evenly on both sides, and then I'm going to release and I can push the slide of the pistol off. And I have now separated my weapon into the frame portion and the slide. So this is your recoil spring here. I'm going to push forward and lift up, and that's just going to rock out of place. The barrel is now here. I'm just going to pick up the back portion of it so that it's angled slightly, and I'm going to pull it out. And these are the basic parts that you're going to get to. This is all you need to do. If you just finished shooting and you need to clean it, you have access to all of the components here where you can use a Q-tip or a scrubbing brush, some spray, and you can clean all of these locations. You can then put lube back on your rails when you're ready to reassemble. Same thing here, you can access all of your parts of the slide you need to clean, your barrel, and your recoil spring. All right, so next we are going to move on to the full disassembly of the frame portion. So I'm going to get these other parts out of view here so they're not a distraction. The only thing we have is this. So there are 3 pins on this weapon. There's one in the back here, and then there are 2 in the front. The only thing you're going to need for disassembling your weapon is a small punch. I have the official licensed Glock tool here. It is not required as long as you have a small punch that meets the similar diameter requirements to be able to push through all of these pins, then you're going to be fine. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this bottom or larger pin. I like to go from one side to the other. The way that the slide stop is assembled and the way that this pin is constructed, you'll understand why I'm doing this, and I'll show you once I remove it. What I will do for this portion is I will again kind of grab in a semi-shooting position, and I will grab the slide lock with my index finger and thumb, and that way I can manipulate this while pushing this pin from one side to the other. You may need to wiggle it just a little bit until that pin goes all the way out. This will then come out. Now, the reason why you have to do that, if you look at this pin, you see there are notches in it. This is also a little small stamped piece of metal, and what happens is as this pin goes through here, that stamped metal will fall down in that notch and prevent it from moving. So you have to wiggle this piece until you get it to a point where that pin will pass and it'll pop out of that notch. It may get locked in the other one. You have to wiggle it some more and then you push it till it comes all the way through. When you have this piece out, if you purchased a new one because you want an extended slide stop or you're just cleaning it, whatever, check this wire and make sure that it is whole. Somebody previously has messed with or disassembled, reassembled this improperly, or something just got messed up in quality control. If this spring is not to the full length that it should be, it may have gotten snapped off. It's not going to have the resistance it needs to have that spring tension, and it's just going to be flapping around and cause you malfunctions. So check that while you have this removed. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this top pin. There's nothing fancy we need to do. It's just smooth pins. So we're going to push it from one side to the other. It does have a little bit of a shape to it, but nothing that's going to interfere with it going into or out of the frame. And then the rear pin here. So these pins in this particular pistol are metal. They are going to be, this one is going to be plastic on a stock Glock. Those are all replacement parts, as you can see. As you can tell, this pistol has had some work done to it. All right, so now we've got this metal piece right here. You can just take your punch, insert it underneath there, kind of lift up till you can grab a hold of it, and it will come out. Now your entire trigger assembly will come out. You can grab the ejector here and just lift the entire assembly. The only thing that's left in here is that little takedown lever that we had to push down in order to remove the slide. There is a metal spring-loaded piece here. If you push straight down on it, it should allow this to drop down. You can kind of put the pistol or the frame on the side, shake it a little bit, and then this will fall out. So the only thing left in this pistol frame right now is the mag release. Now on the Gen 3, this is not reversible. You can tell it's a Gen 3 because it's got a tiny mag release button on this side, and then the hole on this side is much larger. So if you did try to reverse it, it's not going to quite match up. This is a little bit difficult to show while it's in the pistol, so I'll have to kind of explain the best that I can like this, and then when I take it out, I will explain exactly what's happening. So down inside the front portion of the magazine well here, there is a little metal rod that is tilted to one side and goes down into the mag release itself. So we need to slide that to the side and pop it out. There is a notch that it locks into, so I'm going to pop that out. And then again, I'll show you in a close-up with the pieces exactly what's happening inside there. So usually what I'll do is I just have my little long, small, thin, flat screwdriver. I'll reach it down in there and catch that metal rod, push it towards the notch in the mag release until it pops out. What that's going to do is allow our mag release itself to come out. So again, you can see it's just a skinny button on this side, and then it kind of is an L shape here. All right, so now I'm just going to grab some needle nose pliers, and I'm going to grab that little metal rod and I'm going to pull it straight out. And you can see that's all it is just a little thin wire basically. So now what's happening down inside of there? So there is a hole in the front of the magazine well that this slides down into, and it holds it in place. Your magazine release has a little notch down here. You can see that. And what happens is this is sitting in there. So we have to bend this until it pops down in, and it's going to be pulling basically this direction. So as you push the mag release, which you'd be pushing this way, it's fighting that spring tension from this. So when we go to remove it, what we're doing is we're hooking underneath that and pulling it till it pops up here, and then it kind of does one of these. So then that allows this to come out and this piece to be removed from the pistol grip portion. So the only thing left now that we have that's still partially assembled is our trigger assembly. So for the Gen 3s, you have the trigger shoe here that attaches to this bar. We kind of need to, you can see here how everything goes in. It's kind of slotted into the back side here. If you just pull that away, just tilt this down, that'll allow you to pull this up. You can see that it is attached by this little spring that has a hook on both ends. So you just kind of finagle that a little bit until it comes out from the hook. So if you've purchased a new trigger kit or something, chances are this may be a piece that you are replacing. If you are just trying to be fancy and you're polishing up your trigger, this is the area you would be concerned with polishing. There's no need to do this unless you're just trying to make it uniform and pretty. Again, this pistol had work done to it. It came like this. I did not do any of this work. So there's that. Your trigger connector here, if you, again, bought a trigger kit, this may be something that's going to be replaced. Take my flat screwdriver, just kind of place it in between the metal and plastic here, and I'm just going to give it a little twist. I'm not going to pry or try and dig into that plastic at all. Just twist it. It should slide straight out enough that you can grab a hold of it. And then it pulls out. You can see it goes in there kind of deep. But then this would be, if you're buying like a 3.5 pound trigger kit or something, you most likely would be replacing this. Again, if you're polishing your trigger, the only area you really need to worry about is this portion up here, as everything else is kind of out of the way and not really making contact with anything. So those are all of our pieces that belong inside the frame of the pistol. So what we'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this, and I'll walk you through that so you can get everything back together where it's supposed to be. So the first thing that I'm going to start with is I'm going to go ahead and get my magazine release put back in. This can be a little bit of a pain to get the little metal rod lined up in the hole. So I'll drop that back in first. I'm going to keep my thumb on it to make sure that while I'm manipulating this and moving it around, it doesn't just fall out on me. And so what I'm doing is I am inserting that little metal pin right down into this channel here. So I want to get it straight down into that hole and push it until it doesn't go down any further. It does not matter which direction this metal pin goes in. It is the same all the way around. So I'm going to slide it down into that hole. Once it's in place, I'm just going to push it until it stops. So it's now in position. You can see it down in its channel, and then I just need to grab the end of it and kind of push towards the front of the pistol and over until it locks into the channel for the magazine release. I can visually see that it's inside of it. And then I could just test it by pressing my mag release and letting go and making sure that it has that spring tension and it is in proper position. So now I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to go ahead and reassemble my trigger portion here. What I'll do is I will take this and our connector. I'm going to put it in. I'm not going to shove it all the way down. I'm going to make sure that there's a gap there because I need to rotate the trigger bar into there. So I'll get it started most of the way, but again, just leaving a gap. Kind of tilt this down so that our spring with the hook on it shows up. There's the hole that's down here on the bottom. That's where that needs to connect to, so you can just kind of finagle it until it goes in there. Once it's hooked, that needs to drop down inside. We need to make sure that this goes through the slot here on the plastic and then hooks around the trigger connector here, so that at this point, now that that's mated up, I'm going to use my thumb and I'm going to press that all the way in. And once it looks like that, you've got it reassembled. So before we put any of this stuff in, we are going to put this little takedown lever back in. So in order to do that, we are going to have to push down on that flat springy piece of metal that's in the front here. We're going to have to push that all the way down. And then this is going to go with the little raised portion is going to go up. Make sure that we clear that metal piece. Let go of it. It should lock into place. You'll know it's in there when you can pull down on both sides and that piece will drop and then pop back up on its own. Now we can take our trigger assembly. Obviously we know where the trigger goes down into the trigger guard area. It's going to slide in, so it should look just like that. Take this metal piece here, the pointy ends go forward, drop it down into this notch. Now, when you go to reassemble and put these pins in before you put your slide lock in, put this top pin in first. The reason for that is because, again, like I mentioned previously, this little spring that's going to allow this to have tension, when you slide this in, it's going to go up against that pin. That's what it's using for resistance. If you put this in second and that little piece of spring wire is sitting there and you try jamming this in the hole and it's blocking it, you're going to either break or bend that and cause yourself some issues, and then that's not going to be a good day and you're going to need to get a new part. So put this skinny top pin in first. We're going to start on the same side we did before. We're going to push it in, push it down just a little bit, make sure that it's even on both sides. I like to make sure that it's not sticking out further one way or the other. Now that that top pin is in, we can take our slide lock, and again, as we push it into position, that pin that we just put in is going to move that spring down and out of the way, and without even putting the big pin in, we've already got spring tension on it. So now we can take this big pin and just slide it down in there. Again, you may have to wiggle this just slightly to get it to go. And once that's in, you're done with that. And then we just move on to the back pin. You may, depending on how much movement you had, you may need to push your trigger components down when you insert that in there, and then go ahead and push that pin in. Again, double check it, make sure it's even on both sides. And we are good to go. So our frame for our Gen 3 pistol is now reassembled. Let's go ahead and move on to the slide. All right, so here is the slide for our Gen 3 pistol. We are gonna do a full breakdown, whether you're replacing the striker or you wanna polish some of the parts or whatever, or do a complete full breakdown maintenance of this thing, replacing the rear slide plate. You bought a cool Punisher skull logo one, whatever. So what we need to do in order to disassemble this, this little metal portion here is the striker, which is basically the firing pin for this weapon. In this channel here, there is a little piece of plastic that we need to get down in between this piece that's pointing up, put this down here, and we have to push forward on it. While doing that, we then have to push on this plate and slide it down. Keep in mind there are parts in here that are under spring tension, and if they are not secured, they have the potential to go flying and you're going to be crawling around on the ground looking for them. So we don't want that to happen. So the best way that I can suggest doing this is what I'll do is I will put the front muzzle portion of the slide on a table. I will put my thumb over this plate in a way that I can slide it down while maintaining coverage over it, making sure nothing goes flying up and hits me in the face or just goes flying, while also pushing down on that piece of plastic here. So again, I'm going to put this on the table. I'm going to put my punch, pushing it all the way against the striker, and then I'm going to push down towards the table while covering this with my thumb and then sliding this plate off. I will then put my thumb over again just to catch everything. So here's that little plate again. If you bought a decorative one and this is all you're replacing, you can just put that back. Now that this is done here, I'll just take that. That whole assembly will pull out. So you've got your striker here. Again, there are pieces that are under spring tension. Your extractor here, you can't, I would recommend turning this so that the top of the slide is facing up. Wiggle your extractor around a little bit. This pin is going to pull out. It's got a spring attached to it, so make sure that comes out together. This is going to fall. This is going to fall out of the bottom. It too has a tiny little spring that can come out. So again, we're trying to contain all these pieces and not lose them. If you've got a bin or something handy to put all these little parts in so they don't roll away on you, that is preferred. And so now our slide assembly for our pistol is completely empty and there are no little parts in here. You can do a full cleaning. Maybe you're going to drop this in an ultrasonic cleaner, whatever it is you're going to do. You can get Q-tips down in the channel for the striker. You can get all of this thoroughly clean. This right here will cause you the most grief and has the most potential to lose pieces and be the most difficult to reassemble. So if you do not have a specific need or reason to disassemble this and you're not sure what you're doing, I highly recommend that you don't. You can clean this thoroughly as it is. If you are specifically replacing your striker, you want to just polish it, or you are replacing the little plastic cups here with ones so you can shoot underwater, that would be the only real reason you might need to disassemble this part or to change out this spring. So again, if you are not familiar, not comfortable, don't know what you're doing, I highly recommend that you just leave this alone. But if you do know what you're doing, you probably shouldn't be watching this video anyway. So There are several different moving parts to this that again make this kind of a challenge. What we need to do is we need to pull down on this spring. This little black piece of plastic here is actually two pieces that are going to separate. So at the same time, this is going to want to travel down the length of this channel here. So usually what I will do is I will just grip this in my hand. I will use my fingernail from my thumb to pull down on this spring. These little plastic pieces, like I said, they are going to come apart in two pieces. Slowly allow that to go so your spring doesn't go flying. You then have the spring, and then your striker will slide out of this little black plastic collar here. So this is your striker again if you're planning on polishing this or replacing it with some other high-speed, low-drag one that's got speed holes in it so you can shoot faster, then that's what you would do here. So these are all of our parts from the slide assembly of the Glock Gen 3 pistol. So now we need to get this thing back together. This is the part that will cause you, again, the most grief when it comes to this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reassemble our striker assembly here. So the easiest way to do this that I can possibly recommend for reassembling your striker is using a table edge, or in the instance here, I've just got a piece of wood. We've got our little plastic collar here. We've got our striker. It's going to go through here. Make sure you put it in the correct orientation. You have all this dead space basically back there. Usually what I will do is place that little protrusion onto, again, my table edge, or in this case, the piece of wood that's helping me demonstrate this for you. Our spring is going to go over the top. As you can see, there's quite a distance between the tip of the striker and this spring. We have to compress this spring all the way down. All the while holding it in place, we then have to, again, get these two little pieces of the plastic cup to line up perfectly where we need them to, and they're going to sit in the top of that spring like so, wrapped around our striker. So keep those handy. Put your little protrusion on your table edge, or in this instance, my block of wood. We're going to put our spring over the top here. I need to push towards here and then down. While doing that, I've got it held with one hand, so I'm now going to go ahead and put my plastic cup pieces in. Slowly release that tension until the plastic cup again rests up against that portion of the striker. So it should look like this when it's complete. Get our piece of wood out of the way. So now we are going to go ahead and reassemble our slide assembly with all of our little pieces that you have hopefully not lost. Again, you should have this little rod here with a spring that has a plastic cap on the end of it. You should have this little piece of metal here with a small spring that inserts into the bottom of it. This is part of one of your safeties for your Glock pistol. We've got our extractor here, and then you've got your back plate. Again, a lot of people like to swap these out for little cosmetic ones. There's also switches I hear that go back there. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to take our extractor. It goes on the right side of the pistol, which is where the rounds extract from. The little round end is going to go towards the back. It's going to drop down in here. It should sit flush. So go ahead and hold that in place with one of your fingers while you lay this down. This little plunger and spring is then going to go into this hole. You can push this down. You'll feel the extractor kind of move out of the way. Push it down a little more, and it should allow you to pinch it back in. So we want to hold the extractor. That's going to keep this from shooting out anywhere. This little plunger with the spring on it is going to go in with the metal portion forward. The black plastic spring should be towards the rear. There is a small hole on the side there that's going to go into, just like that. It's going to stick out just a little bit. That's fine. Our striker with this little protrusion we use to help assist us getting this back together is going to point up through that channel. We're just going to slide it as far in as it will let us. Once it hits, it's going to be under this spring tension here. So you'll see we need to slide this plate into this groove here, but these two things are in the way. So again, what I'll do is I will put this on the table with the muzzle pointing down, with the rounded end pointing up. Again, if you've replaced this piece, this is where you're going to reassemble this in here. I will slide this into the groove it goes into until it bumps into the striker assembly that is not allowing it to go, I will put my thumb underneath the bottom. I'm going to use my punch here to push that down and out of the way until it allows me to slide this up. We've then bumped into this piece. So I'm going to now push that down and out of the way and continue sliding that up until it moves. You're going to hear that snap in. It should be flush all the way to the top of that groove in the back, and our slide is now completely reassembled. So with our slide here, we're going to take our barrel. We're going to put the muzzle end of the barrel in first and slide it forward until it drops down. Push it back until it locks into place. Take our recoil spring with the little nipply portion going forward. The flat portion in the back here is going to go up against this. So we'll fit that into the little hole. It's going to sit up on top of your barrel. So you're going to need to push forward and then down. Until you're able to get it locked in. So it should be holding itself in place under spring tension. We can now marry the two portions of our pistol back together. There are 4 metal rails here. We want to make sure that we align with our grooves in the slide. So we're going to get them over the top 2 there. This is going to continue its journey back. We're going to pull it all the way to the rear. We'll go ahead and lock it in place. The pistol is now reassembled. We're going to let the slide go, make sure it doesn't fly off. If it does, you've done something completely wrong and may want to start over from the beginning on reassembly. So then we're just going to do a function check on our pistol. Again, we're going to safety check, no magazine, physically, visually inspect, lock our slide to the rear, visually and physically inspect our chamber and ensure that there's no round in there. I can see daylight all the way through. I know my pistol is safe. I'm going to pull the trigger. Pull the slide to the rear and release, pull the trigger, and our pistol is reassembled. So hopefully you found this video useful in your endeavors. If you are having any issues or problems, please feel free to ask down below and I'll do my best to help you with whatever the issue is that you're having. So thanks for watching and have a great day.